The gunshot woke him. Ethan Cole's hand found the Colt 45 Peacemaker before his eyes opened. 10 years in the cavalry had burned that reflex into his bones. Sleep meant nothing. Survival meant everything. He rolled off the cot and pressed his back against the adobe wall. Through the gap in the shutters, dawn light crept across the Arizona desert like blood spreading on sand. Then he heard it. Hoof beats, not one horse, not 10. Hundreds. Ethan moved to the window and looked out. His heart stopped. 400 Apache warriors surrounded his cabin. Their faces were painted with 3 red stripes, the mark of war, the mark of no negotiation. Bows drawn, arrows nocked, every weapon pointed at his door. He counted his bullets. 18 rounds in the gun belt. The Colt held 6. His Winchester, leaning against the wall, held 12 more. Maybe he could take down 7 men before they filled him with arrows. Maybe 8 if he was lucky. But luck had abandoned Ethan Cole a long time ago. And so had safety. For years he had been looking over his shoulder. The army still wanted him for desertion, $500. That was the price on his head. Every bounty hunter from Texas to California had his description. A man couldn't hide forever. Sooner or later, the past always found you. He just hadn't expected it to arrive with 400 painted warriors. In 1862, at Glorieta Pass, Lieutenant Ethan Cole led 30 men into a Confederate ambush. He gave the order to advance when he should have retreated. 29 soldiers died that day. 29 men who trusted him. 29 families who would never see their sons again. Thomas was the last to fall. His best friend since childhood. Thomas died in Ethan's arms, blood bubbling from his lips, still trying to tell Ethan it wasn't his fault. But it was. It always was. The Colt in Ethan's hand had belonged to Thomas. A Colt single-action army, the Peacemaker model, with a worn walnut grip and a scratch along the barrel from the day Thomas dropped it in a river during training. Ethan kept it as a reminder, a punishment, a chain he would drag through the desert until the day he died. After the war, Ethan walked away from everything. No discharge papers, no goodbye. He became a ghost in the Arizona territory, built a cabin where no one would find him, and waited for death to come. Now death had arrived, just not the way he expected. A massive Apache, easily the biggest man Ethan had ever seen, rode forward from the formation. 3 thick red stripes crossed his face like claw marks. Scars covered his bare chest, each one a story written in violence. He carried a war lance decorated with eagle feathers, and his horse was painted with symbols that Ethan didn't recognize, but understood instinctively. This man had killed before, many times. The warrior drove his lance into the ground with a crack that echoed off the canyon walls. Then he shouted in broken English, "Come out! Die like a man, not like a rat in a hole." Ethan's finger tightened on the trigger. He could start with this one. The Colt was accurate to 50 yards. At this distance, he wouldn't miss. But before he could move, a woman rode forward. She positioned herself between the giant warrior and the cabin. She wore a deerskin dress embroidered with turquoise beads. The same turquoise he had seen yesterday, glinting in the desert sun while she knelt beside a broken wagon. Yesterday, that's when everything changed. Ethan had been riding back from the trading post when he saw her, a woman alone kneeling beside a broken wagon. The wheel had shattered, the axle snapped clean through. The mesquite wood had given out, cheap lumber that couldn't handle the desert heat. In temperatures like this, 110 degrees easy, she would die before nightfall. She didn't ask for help, didn't even look at him, just kept working, her hands bleeding from the splintered wood. Ethan should have kept riding. That was the rule out here. Mind your own business, stay invisible. The moment you got involved in someone else's problems, you risked exposure. And exposure meant bounty hunters. But something made him stop. Maybe it was the way she refused to give up. Maybe it was the silence between them. Two people who understood that words meant nothing when survival was all that mattered. Maybe it was Thomas, whispering from the grave, that Ethan had let enough people die. He dismounted without a word, pulled a piece of ironwood from his saddlebag. He always carried spare axle material, a habit from his cavalry days, and went to work. The ironwood was dense, almost as hard as metal, and wouldn't crack in the heat like the cheap mesquite. He secured it with rawhide strips, working quickly and efficiently. The woman watched every movement, not with gratitude, with assessment, like she was memorizing his technique. When he finished, she nodded once. No thank you. No name. She climbed onto the wagon and rode away without looking back. Ethan thought nothing of it, just another day in his quiet exile, until this morning. Now that same woman sat on a painted horse between two massive warriors, and 400 men waited for her command. She spoke something in Apache. The giant warrior, the one who had challenged Ethan, roared in protest. His hand went to the knife at his belt, but she spoke again, her voice sharp as obsidian, and he backed down. Barely. The woman turned toward the cabin. Her voice carried clearly across the morning air. I am Kaya, daughter of Chief Iron Wolf. Yesterday you touched the property of my people without permission. Our law demands blood. She paused. But I have bought you a chance. Ethan's grip on the Colt tightened. What kind of chance? 3 trials. Pass them, and you live with honor. Fail one, and Black Hawk gets what he wants. She gestured toward the giant warrior. Your head on his lance. Black Hawk. So that was his name. The warrior's eyes burned with hatred, not just anger, but something older, something personal. Kaya noticed Ethan looking. His father was killed by white soldiers 3 years ago, shot in the back while he carried a flag of truce. Black Hawk has sworn to never trust your kind again. Her voice dropped. He wants your blood more than he wants water in the desert. I am the only reason you still breathe. Ethan processed this quickly. A daughter of a chief, a warrior with a blood vendetta, 400 men ready to kill him, and somewhere out there, bounty hunters still searching for a deserter worth $500. He had 2 choices, die fighting or die trying to prove himself. He set down the Colt and opened the door. They took his weapons. Thomas's Colt vanished into a warrior's saddlebag. The Winchester followed. Ethan watched them go and felt something crack inside his chest. That gun was the last piece of Thomas he had left, the last proof that his friend had existed. Now it was gone. They gave him a horse with no saddle, no reins, a painted Mustang with wild eyes and a mouth that fought every touch. He would ride like they rode, with his legs and his balance and nothing else. A test before the tests. The journey took half a day. 400 warriors moved as one body, their horses creating thunder that shook the earth. Dust rose in clouds that blocked the sun. Ethan rode in the center of the formation, surrounded by men who would kill him the moment he made a wrong move. Kaya rode beside him for part of the journey. Up close, he could see she was no helpless traveler. A short bow hung across her back, a horse bow made for shooting while riding. A bone-handled knife rested on her belt. She sat on her horse like someone who had been born in the saddle. Don't think I needed your help, she said. I could have fixed that wheel myself. Then why didn't you? Because I wanted to see what you would do. Her eyes met his, dark and unreadable. My father says all white men are the same. They take what they want and give nothing back. I wanted to prove him wrong. Did you? That depends on whether you survive today. They reached the valley as the sun approached its highest point. Towering red cliffs surrounded a natural arena, a bowl of stone and hard-packed earth that had witnessed trials for generations. 3 wooden posts stood in the center, weathered by decades of sun and wind. This was sacred ground. Ethan could feel it in the way the warriors fell silent as they entered. Before the trials could begin, Black Hawk pushed through the circle of warriors. He threw a knife at Ethan's feet. A good blade, Ethan noticed, with a staghorn handle and an edge that caught the light like a mirror. I don't need 3 trials to know what you are, Black Hawk snarled. His English was rough but clear. Fight me, now. One of us dies. If you win, I stay silent. If I win, I take your life before your shadow moves. Chief Iron Wolf sat motionless on his horse. He was a man of 55 winters, with a scar that ran from his forehead to his jaw. A mark left by a cavalry saber, Ethan guessed. The chief's eyes were cold, patient, calculating. He watched but said nothing. This was Ethan's choice to make. He picked up the knife. Black Hawk attacked before Ethan could set his stance. The warrior moved like a rattlesnake, fast, precise, deadly. His blade sliced toward Ethan's throat in a horizontal arc designed to open the jugular. Ethan ducked. The knife passed so close he felt the wind on his face. He pivoted right and slashed back, catching Black Hawk's forearm. Blood welled up, dark against the painted skin. First blood, but Black Hawk didn't flinch. He smiled instead, a cold, cruel expression that promised pain. This man enjoyed fighting, enjoyed killing more. They circled each other in the dust. The warriors formed a perfect ring around them, silent and watchful. Kaya stood near her father, her face carved from stone. Black Hawk lunged again. This time Ethan wasn't fast enough. The blade opened a gash across his left shoulder, deep enough to reach muscle. Fire exploded through his arm. He ignored it. Pain was an old friend by now. They traded cuts for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Ethan took a slash across his ribs that would leave a scar. Black Hawk limped from a wound in his thigh that bled heavily. The dust beneath their feet turned dark with blood. Finally, Ethan saw his opening. Black Hawk overextended on a thrust, leaving his right side exposed. Ethan trapped the warrior's wrist, twisted hard, and drove him face first into the ground. He pressed his knee into Black Hawk's spine and put the knife against his throat. One push, 1 inch of pressure. That's all it would take. Black Hawk's eyes showed no fear, only defiance. He was ready to die. Ethan pulled the knife away and stood up. I didn't come here to kill your people, he said to Chief Iron Wolf. I came to prove I'm not your enemy. Black Hawk rose slowly, his face twisted with humiliation and rage. But Chief Iron Wolf raised one hand, and the warrior froze. The trials begin, the chief declared. The first trial was endurance. They tied Ethan to the center post with rawhide strips that bit into his wrists. His arms were pulled behind the wood, his shoulders stretched to the point of agony. He would stand in the sun until the shadow touched the western wall. If he fell before that moment, he would die. The sun became a weapon. Heat pressed down on him like a physical weight, squeezing the water from his body drop by drop. Within an hour, his shirt was soaked through. Within 2, his vision began to blur. His shoulders screamed. Every muscle in his legs burned. Flies gathered on his face, crawling across his eyes and into his mouth, and he couldn't brush them away. But Ethan had survived worse. Basic training in Texas, where sergeants beat any man who collapsed. Forced marches through the New Mexico desert with full pack and no water. The hell of Glorieta Pass, where he held Thomas as his friend, bled out over 3 hours. This was just pain. Pain he could endure. He focused on his breathing, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Each breath was a small victory against the sun. When his legs wanted to buckle, he thought of the 29 men he had failed. He would not fail again. Not today. The shadow crept across the ground with agonizing slowness. Ethan counted each inch like a prayer. When it finally touched the western wall, he was still standing. The second trial was wisdom. They cut him free, and Ethan collapsed to his knees. His legs had no strength left. His arms hung useless at his sides, the circulation slowly returning in waves of sharp pain. A warrior approached carrying a clay jug. He poured water onto the ground in front of Ethan, cold, clear water that soaked into the dust and vanished. The waste of it was deliberate, cruel. Then the warrior held out a second jug, full, dripping with condensation. Every cell in Ethan's body screamed for it. His throat was cracked leather. His tongue felt swollen to twice its normal size. He could smell the water, could almost taste it on his lips. He reached for the jug, then he stopped. Something wasn't right. The warriors were watching too closely. Black Hawk had pushed to the front of the circle, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Ethan looked around. 400 men had stood in the same sun, watching him for hours. They had not moved. They had not drunk. Their lips were as cracked as his. This was a test within a test. He pushed the jug away. "Give it to them," he said, his voice a ruined whisper. "They stood in the same sun. They deserve it more than me." Black Hawk's face changed. The eagerness drained away, replaced by something Ethan couldn't identify. Shock, maybe, or the first crack in his certainty. Chief Iron Wolf spoke to the warrior holding the jug. The man nodded and began passing the water among the warriors, each taking only a mouthful before handing it on. Kaya moved closer to Ethan. Her voice was low, meant only for him. "Black Hawk wagered against you. He told my father that you would drink without thinking of anyone else, that all white men think only of themselves." She paused. "You just cost him a horse and his best knife." Ethan glanced at Black Hawk. The warrior's jaw was clenched tight enough to crack teeth. One more enemy made, but maybe one small seed of doubt planted. The third trial was sacrifice. 2 warriors came forward, each carrying an object wrapped in cloth. The first unwrapped his bundle to reveal an obsidian knife. The blade was black as midnight, polished to a mirror shine. The handle was wrapped in doe skin and decorated with tiny turquoise beads. It was beautiful and clearly ancient. Kaya's breath caught when she saw it. Her hand moved toward it involuntarily before she caught herself. The second warrior unwrapped Thomas's Colt. Ethan's heart stopped. Kaya translated her father's words, her voice carefully controlled. "My mother made that knife. She worked on it for 2 seasons before she died. It is the only thing I have left of her." She paused, gathering herself. "One of these objects must be destroyed. The fire will consume it completely." She gestured toward a pit where flames already crackled and danced. "You must choose which one." Ethan stared at the 2 objects. The knife, the gun, a daughter's last memory of her mother, a friend's last gift before death. There was no right choice, only different kinds of loss. He thought about Thomas, about the weight of carrying that gun for so long. Every time he held it, he remembered the blood, the screaming, the moment when Thomas stopped breathing in his arms. He had been carrying that guilt for years, letting it poison him, using it as an excuse to hide from the world, to avoid connecting with anyone who might depend on him. Maybe it was time to let go. Ethan picked up the Colt. He looked at it one last time. The worn walnut grip, the scratched barrel, the weight that had been his constant companion through years of exile. Then he walked to the fire and threw it in. The flames embraced the gun eagerly. Metal began to glow. Wood started to char. "Why?" Chief Iron Wolf asked, speaking directly to Ethan for the first time. His English was rough but understandable. "That weapon meant something to you. I saw how you looked at it." "Because I've carried it long enough," Ethan said. "It reminded me of the men I couldn't save. But today I had a chance to save something, someone else's most precious memory. I chose that instead." He looked at Kaya. Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. There are things more important than holding on to the past. Chief Iron Wolf was silent for a long moment. The fire crackled. The warriors waited. Then the chief nodded. You have passed. The celebration should have started then. Warriors began to relax, conversations breaking out in Apache. Someone brought more water, and this time they offered it to Ethan first. But before he could drink, gunfire shattered the peace. 3 shots echoed from the valley entrance. Not Apache arrows, but the sharp crack of rifles. 10 white men on horseback blocked the narrow pass leading out of the valley. They carried Winchester repeaters and wore the hard, weathered look of men who killed for money. Their leader sat slightly ahead of the others, a man with a scar that ran across his right eye, sealing it shut forever. Snake Eye. Ethan had seen that face on wanted posters in every trading post from Tucson to Santa Fe. The most notorious bounty hunter in the Arizona territory. They said he had killed 30 men, maybe more. They said he never gave up on a bounty. Ethan Cole! Snake Eye's voice cut through the valley like a blade. $500. Army wants you for desertion. Been tracking you for 3 years, boy. Thought you could hide in Apache country? He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. You just made my job easier. Now I get to kill some Indians, too. Ethan stepped forward. His heart pounded, but his voice stayed steady. This is my fight, he said to Chief Iron Wolf. Not yours. Let me go with them. Kaya blocked his path. You just threw your gun into the fire. What exactly are you planning to fight with? My fists if I have to. That's brave. And stupid. Chief Iron Wolf rose from where he had been sitting. He looked at Ethan for a long moment, then at the 10 bounty hunters blocking the exit. He gave an order in Apache. 50 warriors raised their bows. Arrows knocked, strings drawn. You belong to us now, the chief said to Ethan. We do not surrender our own to men like these. Snake Eye's smile faltered. He hadn't expected this. 10 men with rifles against 50 archers was bad odds. 10 men against 400 was suicide. You want to die for a deserter? Snake Eye called. A white man who ran from his own army. Chief Iron Wolf's voice was calm and cold. He did not run today. He stood. He bled. He sacrificed. That makes him one of us. He raised his hand. Leave now, or none of you will leave at all. For a moment, it looked like Snake Eye might back down. His men shifted nervously, eyes darting to the arrows pointed at their chests. Then Snake Eye made his choice. He raised his Winchester and fired at Chief Iron Wolf. The shot went wide. Chief Iron Wolf had already moved. But it didn't matter. The battle had begun. Arrows flew like a dark rain. 3 bounty hunters dropped in the first volley, dead before they hit the ground. The remaining 7 scattered, taking cover behind rocks and returning fire. Their Winchesters cracked again and again. A warrior fell with a bullet in his chest, then another. Ethan moved on instinct. The first bounty hunter to fall had dropped his Winchester. Ethan sprinted toward it, dodging arrows and bullets alike, and scooped up the rifle without breaking stride. He came up behind a boulder and found Black Hawk already there, bleeding from a graze on his arm, but very much alive. Their eyes met. I still hate you, Black Hawk said. I know. But these men came here to kill my people. Black Hawk drew his knife. I will hate you after. Now we fight together. Ethan nodded. He checked the Winchester, 7 rounds left in the magazine. I'll draw their fire. You flank right. Black Hawk was already moving. Ethan rose from cover and started shooting. His first round took a bounty hunter in the shoulder. His second missed. His third punched through a man's throat. The remaining outlaws turned their attention toward him, exactly as planned. Bullets whined past his head, chips of rock spraying his face. Then Black Hawk appeared behind them like a ghost. His knife found the first man's kidney. The second died with a tomahawk buried in his skull. Where Black Hawk had gotten a tomahawk, Ethan had no idea. The warrior moved through the bounty hunters like a wolf through sheep, silent and deadly. Snake Eye saw his men dying and made a break for the exit. Ethan tracked him with the Winchester, leading the target, accounting for distance and movement. He fired. The bullet took Snake Eye in the leg, and the bounty hunter fell from his horse with a scream. Ethan walked toward him slowly. The Winchester held steady. Snake Eye rolled over, clawing for his pistol. "You don't have the guts," he spat. "You're a deserter, a coward. You ran from the army and you'll run from me." "I ran because I was broken," Ethan said. "I'm not broken anymore." Black Hawk appeared beside him. Without a word, the warrior knocked an arrow and drew back his bow. Snake Eye's one good eye went wide. "Wait, wait, I'll leave. I'll never come back. I swear." The arrow took him in the chest. Black Hawk's knife followed, driven through his skull with brutal efficiency. The valley fell silent. That night they built a fire in front of Ethan's cabin. The ride back had taken the rest of the day. Two warriors had died in the fight with the bounty hunters, and the mood was somber but resolute. They had defended their own. They had won. Chief Iron Wolf stood before Ethan as the flames danced between them. He held a leather cord with 3 small stones, white, red, and black. "The white stone represents the trial of the body," the chief said, his voice carrying across the gathered warriors. "You stood when you should have fallen." He touched the red stone. "The red represents the trial of the mind. You thought of others when you should have thought only of yourself." He touched the black stone. "The black represents the trial of the heart. You sacrificed what you loved to protect what someone else loved." He tied the cord around Ethan's wrist. "You are recognized. Any Apache who sees these stones will know you are a friend to our people." Black Hawk stood at the edge of the firelight. He didn't speak, but when Ethan looked at him, the warrior nodded once. A single acknowledgement from a man who had sworn to never trust a white man again. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it was a beginning. The warriors departed in small groups, melting into the darkness of the desert. Chief Iron Wolf was among the last to leave. He clasped Ethan's forearm in the warrior's grip, equal to equal, and then rode away without another word. Finally, only Kaya remained. She sat by the fire, staring into the flames. The obsidian knife hung at her belt, safe and undamaged. "You could have chosen differently," she said quietly. "You could have saved your friend's gun." "He's dead," Ethan replied. "He has been for a long time. Holding on to his memory wasn't bringing him back. It was just keeping me from moving forward. And now I learned to live again." Kaya reached into a pouch at her belt and pulled something out. When she opened her hand, Ethan's heart stopped. Thomas's Colt, scorched and blackened, but intact. "My father pulled it from the fire before it was destroyed," she said. "He wanted to see if you would truly sacrifice it. The test was not about losing the gun. It was about your willingness to let it go." Ethan took the Colt. The grip was warm from the fire, but it felt different in his hand now. Lighter somehow. Not a chain anymore. Just a gun. Just a memory of a friend who would have wanted him to live. "If you ever need a place to go," Kaya said, rising to her feet, "you know where to find us." She mounted her horse and looked down at him from the saddle. In the firelight, her face was half shadow and half flame. "And if you ever find another wagon with a broken wheel," a smile ghosted across her lips, "maybe think twice before you stop." Then she was gone, riding into the darkness until even the sound of hoofbeats faded to silence. Ethan stood alone by the dying fire. He looked at the 3 stones on his wrist, at the Colt in his hand, at the cabin that had been his prison for so long. For the first time in years, he didn't want to hide anymore. The next morning, he saddled his horse and rode toward the trading post. The sun was warm on his face, and the desert stretched out before him in shades of red and gold. It was beautiful, he realized. He had spent years not seeing it. Halfway there, he came across a wagon that had been attacked. 3 survivors huddled in the wreckage, terrified and bleeding. They spoke of a new gang that had hit them. A dozen men, led by someone with a cross-shaped scar burned into his face, the most ruthless outlaws to hit Arizona in years. Ethan looked at the Colt in his holster, at the 3 stones on his wrist. Maybe he was done running. Maybe it was time to stop hiding and start fighting for something again. He helped the survivors onto his horse and pointed them toward the trading post. Then he turned west, toward the setting sun. Somewhere out there, men with guns were hurting innocent people, and Ethan Cole had finally found a reason to care.